Hi, welcome to Slaying the Craft, the show where we go inside the mind of a thriller writer. I'm your host, Sabrina Thatcher, a writer, book coach, and podcaster, but most of all, a huge fan of the genre. I'm so excited to introduce my guest with me today. He is the author of 9 novels, countless short stories and screenplays, and a former associate warden in a maximum security prison, a hostage negotiator, and director of California's state patrol system. He was not busy for his 29 years in service. He's been shortlisted and won numerous awards, including the Lefty Anthony Silver Falcon and Public Safety Writers Awards. He's involved in multiple writing organizations, including currently serving as Executive Vice President for the Mystery Writers of America. Welcome, James Latois.
Sabrina, thanks so much. It's great to see you, and thanks for having me here today. Yeah, if you're diving into the mind, it's a shallow pool, so no worries.
Well, I mean, it's really interesting because you probably have better insight than a lot of other authors. I mean, we'll have a lot of other folks that come on that have been law enforcement, but having that interaction with actual people who've committed crimes is probably very different than for me, where I'm like, I've never committed a crime. I don't really know anyone who has, and I'm just I'm just making up murder.
Yeah, and it does help to kind of draw on that as you're creating stories and characters. And even my experience is different than my friends who were street cops. We saw a different side of that offender. So yeah, it's a different world.
Yeah, I bet. So I know that you had a book that was released earlier this year, River of Lies, and you have another one coming out in July. Can you tell me about both of those books?
Sure. Yeah, River of Lies, and thanks for having it there, but just in case, you didn't. River of Lies is the second book in the Detective Emily Hunter series. Now, Emily is a Sacramento police detective, and she's really fun to write. She's kind of sarcastic and a little brash, but part of that is it's her personality, but she's also a woman in a male-dominated profession where, she's got to kind of push the boundaries just to get the same recognition that her female counterparts get. But she's got a great partner with Javier Medina, and they're kind of like this brother and sister, just sniping at each other all the time kind of team. And it's fun to listen to as I'm writing it. But in River of Lies, she and Javier investigate a series of arson fires in the homeless camps in Sacramento, and they finally turn deadly, and that's what drew her into the investigation. So she soon finds that even the homeless have something that somebody wants. And there's a very unusual victim and a very unlikely suspect that start to emerge in the book. So yeah, that was a fun one to write.
I love her stories in particular. I think you do a really good job of being able to, especially as a male writer writing a female protagonist. I really think that you nail it really well in the sense of giving her. I'm going to just say, I think that I've seen some books out there where the female protagonist written by a male is not isn't brash or is very a little more meek or whatever, or is over the top. And I think with Emily, you have this really nice balance of you have to be tough in certain situations, but also she has this deep pool of empathy and kindness when it comes to her mother and the victims that she deals with. I just think I love her.
Good. That's good to hear. No, Emily is like you said, we've both seen as readers, we've both seen, where a male writer taking on a female character goes horribly wrong. And they're just focused on the wrong things, and everything's about her physical appearance and all that kind of stuff. And I was really careful about trying to not do that with Emily. I surround myself with a lot of strong women in my writing life, my agent, my editor. I have a beta reading group of nothing but women who work in law enforcement, so they're able to kind of chime in on,
awesome.
Did I get that right? So yeah, I didn't want to risk having her sound, stereotypical or just, completely bonkers. And yeah, you're right. I mean, the softer side when it comes to taking care of her mom with dementia, transitioning into Alzheimer's, that kind of gave her another dimension, and you see a little softer side that you might not see if you just, see her on the street, doing her detective job.
Yeah. And I appreciate too that her stories they have like very complex and very gritty stories. Like this is like really real life kind of stuff. I like to write about like serial killers kidnapping serial killers. Like that's like probably not going to be a thing, but like the stuff that you're writing about is real and it's gritty and it's important. And I think that I just love the way that you've pulled these stories together, and her perspective is really, it's just really important. And I think that I hope more people read it, because I think she's such a strong female
Oh,
detective
thanks.
that I mean, I'm a big fan. So,
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
yeah. Okay. So you have another one, right? Sins of
I
the
do.
Father.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sins of the Father. I just got the arcs, but yeah, it's that Arizona kind of
I
feel to
love
the
the cover.
series. Yeah, it turned out really well. But this is the fourth book in the Detective Nathan Parker series, and it's set there in Maricopa County. And a lot of the themes that run through the series are Nathan dealing with undocumented migrants, either this side of the border or south. And the kind of the underpinnings for that in the first book, which was Dead Drop, was his partner was murdered by a coyote smuggling migrants over. So it kind of colored his perception of the whole issue, as you can imagine. But he soon finds that he gets trapped down south pursuing that killer, and needs the undocumented migrant population to get him home safely. So it kind of changes his perspective a little bit. He meets some people along the way that have had an impact on his life. So in Sins of the Father, we kind of change focus a little bit, and there's still some migrant ties to it, but it turns more towards domestic terrorism and how that's influencing what's going on in the desert Southwest. And the opening scene was actually based on something that I ran across while I was working in the system. Was there was a snitch, supposedly, that was tossed out of an airplane, and yeah, it happens.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, in the opening scenes of Sins of the Father, a body is discovered at this desert crossroads, and there's nothing around, and it's flat. So how did this man have these injuries that look like he fell from a skyscraper? And that just starts to unwind a whole series of events on who's connected with that man and who he really worked for and what he was doing there.
That is interesting. Well, first of all, that's pretty crazy that that's real. Like that actually for real happened.
Yeah.
But also makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of cartels and gangs and things like that where maybe there's more of that's happening, especially here in Maricopa County. Like I live in Phoenix, so obviously this is like it's a big issue here where we're like it's always being discussed and looked at. And I think again, like I don't know how you do this, and it's something I really admire is keeping that balance, right? Like you're still exploring again these really deep, important kind of like hot button issues in general. You're really exploring those in such a fair way, and I think that that's really, really exciting.
It is a hot button issue, and I do try to kind of thread some of those themes in most of my books. I present the topic. I try not to get preachy about it, but all the information is there. So you've got what the undocumented migrants are experiencing, what they feel, and then what law enforcement has to deal with, and the public. And then you kind of, as a reader, make up your own mind where you land on that issue. It's hard, and there are people trapped in the system on both sides. So
when you're writing that stuff, what kind of research did you do? Like, I mean, obviously a lot of people in law enforcement, but did you speak with people that are migrants, or like how did you do more research on that experience?
Yeah, a little of both. Yeah, I talked with a lot of people who were here originally undocumented, and what their story is, how they got here, why they came here. But also, when I was working in the prison system, I was in charge of 3 deport units in 3 Southern California prisons. So I'd go down to the prisons a lot. We had immigration judges there in the prison that, as these guys were finishing their California sentence, the immigration judges would decide what to do with them next, whether they went back to Cambodia or El Salvador or wherever, or they were released into the U.S. So you see a lot of those stories, and you kind of feel for the guys that kind of were taken advantage of by the cartels to just smuggle stuff over. As the payment for getting across the border. And a lot of them just kind of came here to be with family and, find a job and do
For a
something a
better
little bit
life. That's the
productive
whole,
for a better life, send money
yeah.
back home, that kind of thing. But yeah, then they get trapped in the system.
I think that's like, again, tackling these hot topic issues. And even again, like what I was saying about with Emily, the
Mhm.
the care that has to go in with when creating stories and characters that are real, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
such a balance. And so I also like being able to have been exposed to all of that probably also gives you a deeper perspective, which means that you can do a good job of writing more fairly kind of across the board, which I think is just like so amazing. I can't imagine, you probably have a gazillion stories. I can't even imagine how many stories you have, like you've experienced or heard about or
Yeah.
whatever. You got like a whole well to pull from when you get
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah, there are a few stories left to tell, that's for sure. But you're right though. In River of Lies, for example, the big issue that we tackle there is the homelessness issue in Sacramento. It's got a huge homeless population. They're camped all over the streets, under the freeways, and
Yep.
Per capita, it's higher than San Francisco. So I mean, it's a big issue here. So I've seen it. I've been around it. When I was working with the parole system, we had in Los Angeles parolees living in Skid Row, which is the largest homeless camp in the country.
Yep.
And that presents some unique challenges in how do you supervise a parolee that lives in this mass of, people with, there's no address, there's no, it's the third cardboard box on the right under the freeway. That's about as close as you can get.
Find them. Yeah.
So, going down there and visiting that population, seeing what our parole agents had to deal with, it's a challenge. So it kind of gave me some perspective on how homeless camps do have their own organization and structure and rules for the people who live there. And it's a really different world.
Anthropologically, I find that super fascinating. I think I've told you this before. I have a huge fascination with prisons anyway. And like, if I could have done my life over again, I would have been an anthropologist studying prison systems because there's like their own language, their own systems, the way that everything that they do.
Much.
And I think that it's just so fascinating to me. Just like total side note, I think it's fascinating to me how people come together in communities and how they form that way of their own rule, their own languages, their own rules and things like that. Even in the thriller community, I feel like there's still kind of like we use terms with each other that, my friends who aren't writers have no idea. Things like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it's a culture. It really is a culture, both, like you said, with the writing community, but in prison, there is a prison culture and there's rules and, and consequences if you don't follow those rules.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's get into get into your mind here. Let's get into the nitty gritty of your mind and the craft talk. So you kind of have been around all of this stuff for a really long time. So, but this is a question I'm asking all the authors. Why are you writing the dark and twisted? Like, what drew you to this genre? What keeps you here versus trying to write the next American literary novel?
Yeah. Well, being around crime, some of that it almost stains your soul a little bit in a good way.
I can't imagine it not.
Yeah. So it sticks with you. You're familiar with it. And some of those characters, their voices just never went away. And it's like they're chirping at you, just wanting to get out. In spite of my background, I don't write dark noir prison stories. Yeah. But there's these people that kind of go in and out of the system that kind of drive everything. I've always been a reader ever since I can remember. And everything from science fiction to fantasy to horror, crime, and probably more towards like college and that. I just kind of focused on crime fiction and thrillers in particular. I like that. I like that sense of risk, pace, all the things that are out there that, you want to see this story solved and how it unfolds.
So if you could teach a new writer one thing, what would it be? And can you teach it to me right now?
You don't need it. You don't need help. You're good.
Oh, yes, I do.
Let's see. A couple of things that I've told writers that are kind of getting started, and one of them is you've got to learn to trust yourself. you've got a story to tell. Only you can tell it, but put it down on the page and trust yourself to be able to do that. I've seen a lot of writers that they write their novel or first half of the novel and they doubt themselves and just give up. So there's something to be said about finishing it through, because the good thing is you get it down and then you can go back and have fun and revise it. I didn't appreciate how much fun revision was when I first started. I thought everything was going to be in the first draft and it was going to be wonderful. Unicorns were going to come by and all that, and that just doesn't happen. So, but the fun of it is getting into that story and really massaging it, polishing it, and getting that revision. So it really tells the story you want to tell.
Yeah.
I think some of the other things is have people around you that you trust to kind of just be a sounding board, if nothing else. And some of the things that we do in the thriller community, the writing community, is we're able to just vent sometimes that, hey, this just isn't working for me. And just sometimes in that conversation, it's like something comes out, well, have you thought about this point of view or something like that? And it's like, oh, wait a minute. And then you see the light come on and it's like, okay, maybe I can do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think writing groups are hugely important. Just because, I mean, you have to be discerning, and you are the owner of your story. I always want to tell people that you are the owner of your story. So be discerning when you get feedback. But it's so nice to be like, I'm stuck on this scene. I need to have these two people have a conversation and I don't really know what that would look like. And so just having somebody else to bounce off you. I'll give an example, how important this is. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to my husband. I was finally revealing what my story is. I have not told anyone what my story is. I was finally going through it with somebody, and involves a hitman. And he's getting rid of a body. So I was like, he's going in the desert and he's dropping it at 7 different places. And my husband goes, hitman is not a serial killer. He's not going to drop body parts in the desert. And I was like, you know what? Okay. So it was just, sometimes it's just a pointing out to you, even in your own mind is you're oh, I got it. Actually, sometimes you need other people to look at your logic and help you out.
But it's not out of the question, though. I mean,
I feel like it was reasonable, but
it's legit. It's legit. It gives him a little style. But one of the things that was really popular with guys that I saw in prison, unsuccessful apparently, were that they'd kill somebody, they'd drag them out to the desert, but there was a whole decade of you had to burn the body. So everybody was burning the body, torching a car with the body in the car to try to hide who the victim was and all that kind of stuff. So is dumping body parts out of the question? Maybe not.
Guess not. If you're burning bodies,
you got to get rid of it somehow. Got to recycle.
He does. He has to get rid of it somehow. I mean, the book is called Just Another Body in the Desert. There literally has to be a body in the desert. So
there you go.
Yeah. Okay. So I love those things. And I especially love what you were saying about finishing and revising, because I think that is very true. And I can speak from my own experience as I am aspiring, I am writing, I am learning through all of this. And what I'm finding is that getting there to that middle part is really hard. It is the part where you want to quit, where you question everything and you want to give up. And you're so right. The instinct is to go back and redo that first half over and over and over again. And I think it's a challenge. How do you know if that's your process or if you're delaying? What's the the barometer?
And that's the thing, because I think everybody goes through this in their own way. And you're right. It's that one point in the novel, and I do it every time. I mean, Sins of the Father is going to be number 10. And there's a point in the middle of the book where I know this is a complete and utter failure. This is the time that people are going to realize I'm a fraud. I shouldn't be doing this. They're going to come and repossess my keyboard, and I'm never going to be able to write again. But then you trust yourself and you finish it and you realize, oh, well, now it makes more sense and it doesn't stink as bad as you thought it did. But yeah, I mean, I when I first started writing and I hit that point, it was like, I don't know if I can do this. I mean, do I have the chops to do this? And I went
Mm-hmm.
to a writers' conference, book passage mystery writers' conference in Corte Madera in Marin County, and it was a panel, really small conference, like 50 to 75 people, so it's very intimate, very craft focused. But the panel that day was Michael Conley, Robert Craze, and Don Winslow. Okay,
Wow. What a
and
panel.
and Conley said the same thing that I was feeling, is that he has imposter syndrome when he's in the middle of a manuscript, and it's like, well, God, if he's feeling that,
Yeah.
maybe I'm
Like
doing
this is
something right.
normal.
Yeah, it's normal, and this is okay to feel this way. You just have to finish it and see it through, and then you can always make it better.
Yeah, absolutely. I do find that fascinating because I follow JT Ellison. She has the Creative
Mm-hmm.
Edge is her like
Yep,
craft series that she does on
I do
Substack.
too.
And
Yep,
so she's got like 23, 30 books. I don't know. It's like double digit numbers books out.
she's a machine.
And
Yeah, she is a
she's a machine. Oh
machine.
my
Yeah.
God, she's incredible. I'm like, if I
Mm-hmm.
could be half as productive as you, I would have like my one book finished.
Yep. Yep.
So, um, but I think that one of the things I saw is that she was sharing over the last year for this new book that she has coming out in September, Last Seen, and she was sharing her process, and she tried something different and it didn't work, and she struggled, and it was all of these things, and it was
Yep.
just for me like seeing someone who has like multiple books out and saying,
Yep.
yeah, like this is still hard. I still question everything. Like that's okay. This is probably it's stupid that this is part of the process. I wish I was like somebody who was like, oh yeah, I'm great or whatever. But no.
Yeah.
But
Right.
then again,
That
those
doesn't
people
work.
usually they don't take feedback well. So there's like a whole
That's true too. But you're right about JT. I think she's amazing, and she and I had a chance to sit down and just talk about process. And I think I had my fourth novel coming out, and she kind of looked and said, that's the point where things shift in your writing
hmm
career and your process. And she was right. At that point, I've been kind of floundering around, getting these 4 books out, and something changes around that time where you're getting used to your process. You understand what it is. You're still exploring other things to make it more efficient, but something happens then at that point where things start to unwind. She she uses a process called 40 scenes, where she
hmm
gets 40 index cards and she writes out the scene. So I tried it on the next book. I think that book was Do the Devil Within or Serve Cold, and I wrote my 40 scenes out. I was getting ready to sit down at the keyboard and start writing this thing, and I made it through the first card before I had to change it, because that character that I had in the first card, that character had to die. There was no reason that she needed to exist beyond that first card. So was it a waste of time? No, I don't think it was, because it made me think about that scene and put it where it needed to be. But at least it got that stuff out. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's all these little things that you pick up from your writer friends.
Yeah. Well, and I think the whole like getting it out is
Mm-hmm.
it. So like what I also hear often, and you were kind of talking about with the revision piece, that writing is rewriting, right? Like that first draft.
Yep.
That's why like Anne Lamott says to write your shitty first draft, like just get it out.
Right.
But I think it also is not applicable to everybody. Everyone has to kind of figure out their own process. But I think it's worth the shot of like spending time writing something that's out, and you're kind of exploring, okay, I think that this you're learning the story
Yeah.
because you're making it up, right? So you're learning the story as you're writing, and then you're refining the story as you're writing, and then you're like, oh, this was not the story at all. The whole thing comes out, try again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you, one of the things I think you do super well, I've talked about, is your characters. They're really holistic, they're well-rounded
Okay.
and fully fleshed out. How do you create your characters?
Yeah.
Like literally at what point in the process? Like I'm talking tangible. Do you have a sheet you use? Do you do a thing on the board? Do you write 30,000 words and then go back and do character development? Like where is that at?
Yeah. Yeah. I start with character even before I outline the story. I mean, I want to know who I'm going to be living with for the next 6 to 8 months while we're going through this creative journey, and I want to get in their head a little bit. So I'll do character sketches. I use Scrivener to draft, so I'll use that character screen that they have and kind of fill that out. Yeah, I do that. But one of the things that I've done, and it was helpful, is I wrote a short story in first person in that character's viewpoint. It was a woman who was a pharmaceutical exec in a male-dominated board. So I had to feel what she was up against in the board, how she thought, how she acted, and how she spoke. So that short story helped me do that. And by the time I got to the keyboard to start writing her character, I already heard how she sounded and what she was like. So that's the kind of thing that I'll do to kind of get in that character's head. With Emily, it's the same kind of deal. She's kind of an amalgam of many women I worked with in the prison system and in law enforcement. So some of those voices are kind of these people that are just kind of poking out. But I'll spend more time with the characters up front so that by the time I outline the story and really get into, actually writing it, I know who these people are.
So, which I think makes a lot of sense, because doing it this other way is a lot harder. I'm writing a scene, I get stuck in I can write the whole book, but dialogue is my big issue, because I'm like, oh yeah, I know it needs to happen, but I don't know how they're supposed to say this, right? Like, how do you develop a whole person? And then there's also this idea of, in my own head, right? Like, I flip-flop all the time. People do that. People are unpredictable. But how does that make sense when you're putting it on the page? That is a really hard concept, I think, to grasp. And so you do a short story. Like, I love the idea of doing a short story in first person. One thing I've done is try to put my characters in in Cheers. They're sitting at the bar and they all order a drink and then interact. But I've tried that and it's still really rough. So how long and how many times do you think it kind of takes you to really get to the appropriate character voice?
I think it varies. Sometimes you're starting off a story and you know what that voice is. You know what this character wants to be. There's a manuscript that my agent has now that we're trying to get out the door, and I knew who this guy was, and it's kind of based on people that I ran across in prison. He's a guy that did serve time. Now he's coming back out and he's going back home. And he's facing all this, nobody wants him back in the community kind of thing.
I'm already excited. I definitely want to read that book. Okay.
Thank you. So that kind of voice, and he's out for clearing his name for a crime he didn't commit and that kind of thing. But then it gets much bigger than that. And who does he have to sacrifice, and is he willing to do that to clear his name? And so that internal dialogue of, struggle of, how far should he go and who does he hurt in the process kind of fill in his narrative.
Do you have a craft book or craft resource that you really enjoy?
Yeah, you have already mentioned Bird by Bird from, by Anne Lamott. That's probably one of the best ones I've got. I've got Stephen King's book. I've got Hallie Efron's book that she has on craft. Those are three primary ones I think are really, really good. I've got a couple of others down in my library in the dungeon that I'll pull out from time to time. But those three are probably the three that I go to the most.
Yeah. Do you think, if somebody is new to writing, do you think they should start exploring and start playing with writing before they read a craft book, or they should read it first, or simultaneously?
I think they can do it together. I think they can do it simultaneously. I hate to stifle anybody's creative spark by saying, you got to read this first. I mean, if you've got a story idea, write it. And then you can always learn how to do it more effectively and how to fine tune it a little bit when you look at a craft book. I mean, Hallie's book talks a lot about revision, and so does Anne Lamott, on just getting that thing uncovered from what you originally created. So I don't think there's one way to do it, but write it. Get writing.
Just get writing. I totally agree. Because I just think I've seen some people that they never wrote a book, so they read one and they're like, okay, I'm going to do exactly like what this is, which is not a bad way to do it, right? Because you're learning. But I just wonder how much of it then becomes kind of forced into this box versus you've explored to see what your mind creates.
Yeah, I think you've got to give yourself the freedom to explore a little bit on your own, because if you're just following somebody else's footprint, you're not going to have that unique voice that,
No.
editors and agents want to look for. They want Sabrina's voice. They don't want, somebody else's voice. So, it's getting that uncovered, I think, is probably what people struggle with the most is where's their voice and their story, and not just regurgitating something else that, we've seen, a dozen
Yeah,
times.
absolutely. And it takes a long time. Like
It
it takes a long time to
does.
learn that. And again,
It does.
you're like saying books 4 and 5, that's you having agent getting published 4 and 5, and you're still like, okay, like now maybe I'm getting this down. But so
Yep.
for newer writers like this, it takes a long time.
It does. It
Because,
does.
and what I've learned too is my first book that I wrote, that died in query submissions, which is fine. So the first book I wrote, it was like, I just figured out how to write a whole book, like just writing and finishing the book. This time, I
Right.
think it's taken me a long time for my revision and writing it, because I know what I was like, okay, like that's what I didn't do last time. And so I can only
Mm-hmm.
imagine how much more you get that every time you write a book, is like, oh, your book
Yeah.
should, in theory, get better. Your skills should get better, right?
Yes.
And be
Yes.
patient. Be patient. Brandon
Yeah.
Sanderson said your job as a beginning writer is to write your first 3 books as fast as you can. Like that's your job, is to figure out what your process is, get those 3 books done, and then start worrying about everything else.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, job number one is just is writing the book, getting that down, and I didn't know how much being a hostage negotiator would kind of play into my life as an author, because
Really?
it's let me wait out submissions and without freaking out. It's like, I can wait this out. It's because nobody realizes before they start this process how long everything takes. I mean, it takes you however long to write the book, whether it's 6 months or a year or 2 years. You get an agent, you give it to the agent, he or she might have it for another 6 months or more, and then let's say you finally get an offer on that book from a publisher. They're going to have it for at least another year before it sees the light of day. So I mean, you're talking 3 years since you wrote that book that it's finally going to see the price. And that, I think, was one of the things that surprised me. It's not this just print on demand kind of manuscripts ready and done and out, and everybody has it now. It's a long process.
It is. If you're wanting to be traditionally published, it's
Yes.
a process,
Yes.
and you've got a lot of hoops to kind of jump through. But then you're also seeing, which, I mean, it's also frustrating because you see people that are like going through and they've gotten this far, and then the industry gets weird. Like publishing is weird. It is weird.
It is weird. It's a weird business. It sure is.
It is. Okay, so I've got a couple of questions here for you. I've got 10 questions that are kind of a rapid fire sort of thing.
Okay.
And these are going to ask for all of our authors so that we can see kind of what is everyone thinking? How's the difference between everybody?
Okay.
Okay. So first of all, what is on your desk, your writing desk? What's that look like?
Oh, it's when I'm writing, it's a mess because I've got notes and post-it notes and cords and plugs and all this stuff all over the journals and everything all over the place. And then I'll clean it off before I start another book. So it kind of goes from place to place. So yeah, I've got weird things, like a little, just for kind of like, okay, don't take yourself too seriously kind of thing.
Yeah.
But, things like that on my desk.
That's fun. So what ritual, if any, do you have before or after you write?
Let's see. I'm a morning writer, so usually that's my best creative flow. The dogs get me up early, so usually by 5:30 I'm behind the keyboard and I'm pumping away, and I'm good for about 4 hours, and then everything else just goes to mush. So then I kind of switch gears and do other writing related stuff, whether it's marketing, social media, looking at other stuff that I've got to do. But that's kind of where I land. Lots of coffee in the morning, and the dogs will keep me awake. If I'm stuck, I'll take the dogs for a walk and kind of mull over the scene that I'm working on, and a lot of times that'll unlock it. And kind of back at it.
Yeah. If you're writing multi-POV or multiple timeline, do you write straight through like the reader would read, like linearly, or do you write each section and then tie them together?
I write straight through.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the most bullshit piece of advice you've heard?
There are so many. Let's see. I think there are so many. When I first started and I was looking for, craft ideas everywhere, there's so many blogs and even some of the craft books that, you must do it this way. You have to write this way. And anytime you get that kind of feedback, it's like, that doesn't pass the smell test. I mean, everybody has their own process, and you've got to find out what that is for you. What works for me might not work for you, but everybody's got to find their own thing. So I think if you're hearing that there's only one way to do it, there's only one kind of approach, then that's BS.
Just disregard that, because that is not true.
Yep.
Okay, what's the best piece of advice you've heard?
Wow. I've been lucky. People have been really, really good to me, just, getting into the business and kind of nurturing my little baby writer self, after getting out of prison.
Literally.
But yeah, there's been so many, but I think just, it's kind of what I mentioned earlier is just, you've got a story, just trust yourself to tell it. And, only you can tell that. So just trust yourself.
What is the darkest idea you've had that scared you about yourself?
There are so many.
Because here's the thing, thriller writers,
yeah.
we get like real dark. There's a lot, like there's murder happening in our heads, people. Like this is not normal, but also
it's not normal. But is that dark? I mean, for us, is that really dark? I don't know. That one's hard to answer. I don't think there's anything that has kind of scared me away from writing it. I mean, it's not like you never kill a dog or you don't hurt kids kind of thing. Those are different kind of rules. But I don't think anything's off the table. I'm even writing a kind of a paranormal thing now that it's like, a couple of years ago I would have never even thought of taking on, that kind of topic.
Yeah, that's cool. How many drafts do you do before you share with others?
Oh God. I probably do at least 6 drafts before other people see it.
Okay. Yeah. That's also encouraging to hear that it's not a first draft situation. Everybody, don't send your first draft to your beta readers.
No.
Not that I've experienced that.
I think everybody has.
I think we've all done it, yeah. What part of the process is your favorite?
I think the part of the process I enjoy the most now is that revision thing, because the sweat equity's been done. You've got the draft out. You've got the story pretty much locked in, and now you get to go in and kind of re-experience that story and make it really yours, and have that voice come through, and just polish it and refine it and make it even better. So I think that's the part I enjoy now. And I know when I first started out, that was torture. Revisions were torture before, but I kind of get into that now.
Yeah. Well, that's exciting that eventually it becomes something you're really excited about, because it is kind of torture. What part of the process is your least favorite?
The least favorite? I think the thing that I hate every book is when you go and ask for blurbs from fellow authors and that kind of stuff. That you feel like Oliver with your little bowl and say, please may I have some more? Yeah,
please,
and it's like
my book.
Yeah, and it's part of the business. We all do it. I'll blurb authors, and I've been very lucky to have people blurb mine. But that's just the part that is the least pleasing for me to do.
That makes sense. Okay, and last one is, what is your old school favorite mystery or thriller?
Oh wow, old school
like
mystery
this is
or
maybe
thriller.
when you were younger and you were reading. Maybe you were in college, you were reading it. Like this is like when you think about mystery thrillers, this is your go-to old book.
Wow. Huh. I would even take it a little bit away from mystery thriller and it was more of a horror that really got me hooked, and it was Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Ooh,
I mean,
okay.
I was in seventh grade, eighth grade, and I'm sitting there reading this book, waiting for the bus, and I'm just reading the book, and it's got to a real spooky part, and that bell rang and scared the bejesus out of me. So I knew there was something about these words on the page that really got in there and made sense. And it's like, oh, okay. And that's kind of the book that really made me more of a reader. I got really involved in just reading everything I could. And I think that I owe it to that book, I think.
That is awesome. I love to hear people's their favorite, the thing that got them here. And also because books live in perpetuity. So that's also the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just want people to remember books live in perpetuity. So if you are a writer and your book comes out and there's not a lot that's happening, or maybe that happens, they live on, right? Well, thank you so much, Jim, for being with me today. I really appreciate it. So if people want to find you, where can they go?
Well, thanks, Sabrina. It's been a blast to talk with you. It always is. Yeah, you can find me at the website at jameslittrell.com, and I'm on most of the social media sites. Author James Littrell on Facebook and Instagram. Blue Sky, I'm there. Twitter, still hanging out. And then, Instagram.
So you are accessible, which I think is amazing because I'm only on one platform. You can find me on Instagram as Sabrina Thatcher Author. And if you want more information about my book coaching services, visit crimeandquill.com. Until next time, stay sharp and write twisted. Bye.